Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and this is Superhero Rewind. I don't want to hate Batman Returns, I really don't. I watch it again every few years, remembering the incredible ambiance and production value, and hoping there's been something I keep missing in the story or the dialogue that will explain why a lot of people still love it, and why I'm always disappointed. Sadly, after seeing this for probably the dozenth time, I was once again disappointed. Batman Returns is very different in its tone from the first film, despite having the same creative team and a lot of the same cast. Since the first one was so successful, Warner Brothers gave Tim Burton nearly complete creative freedom over the sequel. Because of that, it's a much more stylistic movie, which is the biggest thing it has going for it. The one thing the studio did really push for, though, was for the Penguin to be the villain, because I guess they figured he's the most popular Batman villain next to the Joker, though I've never heard an actual Batman fan say that. Tim Burton felt like the comic book Penguin wasn't much of a character. He was just this short, fat guy who walked around with a top hat and an umbrella. So he used the Penguin's look as a jumping point and created a whole different character. I would have respected that if he'd given the Penguin more depth, but it's hard for me to see it as anything but an excuse to do something that looks gruesome and creepy. The comic book Penguin is an intellectual. He's well-read, well-spoken, very British, and the leader of a big crime syndicate. He's not my favorite villain either, but the one thing I always liked about him is how he has this high society attitude at the same time as he's sealing the doom of some henchman who failed him or an associate who double-crossed him. Tim Burton's Penguin doesn't have those kind of nuances, though. He's a crude mutant who lives underground and makes bad puns about raw sewage with lines like, "I was their #1 son, but they treated me like #2. A far cry from some of the clever original Joker lines in the first film. The thing that makes this movie kind of hard to watch for me is just how convoluted the story is. It isn't that it has too many characters, it's that it's hackneyed in how they all get together. It's always too coincidental to do two villains' origins in the same movie. I know the Penguin has been around for a while underground, but the time he chooses to finally reveal himself and set his plans in motion just happens to coincide with Selina Kyle becoming Catwoman. Why couldn't one of these villains already be known to the public at the start of the film, as Two-Face was in Batman Forever? So here's the plot in a nutshell. The Penguin wants to get revenge on Gotham City because his parents threw him in the sewer when he was a baby, since he was horribly deformed. He gets together with Max Schreck, who tries to help him become mayor. When that doesn't work, he tries to kill a bunch of little kids. And when that doesn't work, he tries to kill everyone. Meanwhile, Max Schreck's pathetic secretary, Selina Kyle, who has no self-esteem and no fashion sense, finds some files that could ruin Max, so he throws her out a high window and a bunch of cats bring her back to life by trying to eat her. She has a nervous breakdown and naturally decides to become a supervillain. Bruce Wayne falls in love with her and is quite surprised when he finally, way too late, discovers this insecure, spastic, and mentally unstable woman happens to be Catwoman. Penguin and Catwoman team up to frame Batman for a bunch of crimes, but thanks to all his gadgets, he's able to foil that plot pretty easily. In the end, he stops Penguin from killing everyone using penguins and gives Selina Kyle a speech about how she doesn't have to be evil. Penguin dies, Catwoman apparently dies a whole bunch of times, but has the superpower of being able to die 9 times, so she's fine at the end. Now let me get this out of the way. I agree with all the positive stuff fans like to point to when they talk about how great this movie is. It has a great, dark, twisted style. The casting for both Penguin and Catwoman is very good. A bunch of penguins walking around Gotham City with missiles on their backs is a pretty cool image. Christopher Walken is always good, and the soundtrack is epic, haunting, and stays with you. But I'm sorry to say, to really enjoy this movie, I have to turn my brain off, because it doesn't make any kind of semblance of anything remotely close to the idea of sense. Catwoman is brought to life by cats. Are they some kind of special cats? Are they radioactive cats? What possessed them to all come out of the woodwork at once to chew on a lifeless corpse? Again, it's a cool image, but there's no explanation for it whatsoever. Maybe they all drank some of Max Schreck's sewage and it turned them into some kind of super cats, and they passed their powers on to Selina Kyle? I don't care what the explanation is, but there needs to be one. And being able to die 9 times... Okay, forgetting for a moment how hokey it is to take a superstition, say it's real, and then give it to a human character, she keeps saying she's died in places she doesn't seem to die. Bruce Wayne falls for Selina Kyle. She's obviously mentally unstable, and he only seems to be interested in her because she's the main female character in the movie. Even Alfred seems to think he's nuts for being interested in her. Every character in this movie is reprehensible. I don't like anyone, and therefore I don't care what anyone does. All Max Schreck cares about is money. Selena Kyle just needs to get over herself. She's whiny, she's insecure, and that's a far cry from the confident Spitfire the character was in the comics. We're supposed to feel sorry for the Penguin because he grew up in the sewer and was shunned by society, but I don't, because he's vulgar, irritating, and has no humanity at all. You could argue that he has no humanity because society has made him that way, but look, there's a scene where he explains to someone on the news that all he wants is to learn about his parents and see where he came from. He just wants to try to fit into society. Turns out he's lying and he just wants to get revenge on society, and that's not interesting. What if they had gone with that idea? What if he really didn't know what happened to his parents and he really did want to try to fit in? Then, when society still doesn't accept him, he could do terrible, villainous things because he can't figure out how to fit in. That way, we would have some reason to be sympathetic toward him, but as it is, he's just an excuse to give Batman someone to fight. The one villain plot that was a good idea isn't even explored, and that's Max Schreck's plan to build a power plant that secretly sucks power out of the rest of Gotham and gives it to him. Oh, and why does the Penguin have all these melodramatic speeches that sound like he's had acting lessons? I thought he was supposed to be completely antisocial. In a world as different as this one that we're given here, we need a human character that we can latch onto. Batman's only in this movie because his name is in the title, and he doesn't even, quote, return. He's been there the whole time. All he does is take his vehicles and gadgets up against the villains, and he prevails because he's the good guy. Any superhero could have been put in his place, and it would have been exactly the same movie. There are a lot of good ideas here, but none of them are explored or explained very well. Like the idea of society refusing to accept the Penguin, like I said. Selena Kyle is supposed to represent the way society looks, or I guess the way it looked in 1992, at women. She's unimportant, all she can do is organize paperwork and make coffee, nobody treats her like a person, and because of that, she sees herself the way the world sees her, worthless and pathetic. She's an extreme, and Catwoman is the other extreme, the fully sexualized woman, and Selena isn't happy with that either. Even after she comes back from the dead, she's still insecure when out of the costume, and in the costume, all she does is try to punish the men who have hurt Selena. This could all work if she was less of an archetype, and if it was more subtle. It leads to a lot of really painful moments, like when she and Batman fight on a roof and he hits her. She says, quote, "How could you? I'm a woman." Batman actually stutters and she gets in a good kick. It's hard to imagine Batman's that naive, or that he has such a stereotypical view of women as being weak and helpless. Batman Returns is all about images, and it isn't about a story. I think there are semblances of themes, but they get buried under confusing plot and painful dialogue. It's not without imagination, certainly, but if there's any art, it's all visual. Batman Forever happened because the studio decided Batman Returns was too dark, but I'm not sure that was really the problem. I'd say it's too vulgar, perhaps, with Penguin lines like, quote, "just the pussy I've been looking for," and the scene where he bites a man's nose off. I don't know if those scenes are supposed to be funny, because they aren't to me, and if not, then I don't know what they're for. This movie doesn't seem to take itself very seriously, and the dialogue is actually much sillier than the first, so I don't think it's too dark. It just doesn't have enough real substance. It pains me, but I can only give Batman Returns a 1.5 out of 4, and that 1.5 is all for the ambiance. Story and character are too important to me to go any higher than that when I feel that this movie doesn't have either. Well, thanks for watching, and join me next time for a review of Spawn.